They say love makes you crazy things, but what happens when that love is taken for granted, mocked behind your back, and treated like a convenience store? Well, let me tell you about the day I decided that being a doormat wasn't part of my job description anymore. My name is Charlotte Fitzgerald. I'm 75 years old now. And this is the story of how I crashed my own son's wedding without even being there, I suppose. I should start at the beginning, back when I thought I was doing everything right. After my Harold passed 8 years ago, I threw myself into being the perfect mother and grandmother. When my youngest, Marcus, announced his engagement to Tiffany 2 years before the wedding disaster, I welcomed that girl with open arms. Not just polite arms, mind you, but genuine grandmother teaching you family recipes kind of arms. Tiffany was 28 then, sweet-faced with those big doe eyes that made you want to protect her from the world. She'd lost her mother when she was just 16, and my heart ached for that girl. I saw it as my calling, my chance to be the mother figure she'd been missing. I taught her my famous pot roast recipe, the one I'd guarded like a state secret for 40 years. I helped her navigate Marcus's moods, shared stories about his childhood, and even took her shopping for the perfect Christmas gifts for the family. For 2 years, I thought we were building something beautiful. She called me Mom Charlotte and seemed to hang on every word of advice I offered. When they announced their wedding date, June 15th, I was over the moon. Marcus told me they wanted to keep things simple, but I wouldn't hear of it. This was my chance to show Tiffany what family really meant. I insisted on handling the reception buffet as my gift to them both. Over the next 3 months, I threw myself into wedding preparations like a woman possessed. I spent hours researching caterers, tasting menus, and planning a spread that would make Martha Stewart weep with envy. $3,000, my entire quarterly Social Security check, and then some from my savings, went into creating what I knew would be the perfect reception buffet. But it wasn't just the food. I coordinated with the florist, found vintage tablecloths that had belonged to my grandmother, and even arranged for live music. Tiffany would call me almost daily with updates and questions, telling me how grateful she was for everything I was doing. Mom Charlotte, I don't know what I'd do without you, she'd say, and my heart would swell with pride and purpose. I felt needed, wanted, important. After 8 years of widowhood and increasingly emptiness, planning this wedding gave me a reason to wake up excited every morning. The week before the wedding, I was practically glowing. I'd confirmed every detail twice, picked up my navy blue mother of the groom dress, and even gotten my hair done at that fancy salon downtown. Everything was perfect, or so I thought. June 8th, exactly 1 week before the wedding, changed everything. I'd gone to Marcus and Tiffany's apartment to drop off the final head count for the caterer. I used my key, the one they'd given me for emergencies, and called out as I entered. No response, but I could hear voices coming from the kitchen. So I headed that way with my folder of wedding details. That's when I heard Tiffany's voice, crystal clear. I swear, Audrey, she's driving me insane with all this wedding stuff. It's like she thinks it's her wedding. I stopped dead in my tracks. Audrey was Tiffany's older sister, the one who lived 3 states away. Just ignore her, Audrey's voice replied. Old ladies get weird about this stuff. They have nothing else to do. Old ladies. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. The worst part is, she just assumes we want her involved in everything. Tiffany continued. Like, I appreciate the buffet, obviously, it's saving us thousands. But she acts like she planned the whole wedding herself. Well, at least she's useful. Audrey laughed. Speaking of which, didn't you say there were going to be like 15 kids at this thing? Oof, don't remind me. But I actually had a brilliant idea about that. Charlotte clearly loves feeling needed, right? So I'm going to ask her to watch all the kids during the reception. Keep them entertained and out of everyone's hair. She thinks she's being helpful, and we won't have to deal with screaming toddlers ruining our first dance. I found myself leaning closer to the kitchen doorway, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they'd hear it. The folder in my hands began to tremble. That's actually genius, Audrey said. Keep the old lady busy with babysitting duty. She'd probably love it. Exactly. And it means the adults can actually enjoy the party. Win-win. I mean, what else is she going to do? Stand around trying to insert herself into conversations with our friends? At least this way she'll have a purpose. A purpose. Like I was some charity case they were throwing a bone to. They were both laughing now, and each giggle felt like a knife twisting in my chest. You're terrible, Audrey said, but she was still laughing. Poor old Charlotte, relegated to diaper duty at her son's wedding. She'll never know the difference. She's probably been looking forward to being the doting grandmother figure anyway. This just makes it official. I stood there in that hallway, my entire world shifting beneath my feet. 2 years of what I thought was genuine love and connection reduced to this. I was the useful old lady, the free babysitter, the woman too pathetic to realize she was being manipulated. Quietly, carefully, I backed toward the front door and let myself out without making a sound. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the wedding folder in my lap. All those hours of planning, all that money, all that love I'd poured into making their day perfect. And I was nothing more than convenient help to them. The worst part wasn't even the money or the planning. It was the realization that every conversation, every Mom Charlotte, what do you think about this? Every moment I treasured as bonding with my future daughter-in-law had been a performance. She'd been managing me, not including me, Dot, as I drove home. One thought kept echoing in my mind. If they wanted to treat me like hired help, maybe it was time I started acting like it. I spent that entire evening sitting at my kitchen table, staring at my wedding planning notebook. Page after page of carefully written details, each representing hours of work, love, and excitement for a day that was supposed to celebrate my family growing larger. But now, looking at those pages, all I could see was evidence of how thoroughly I'd been played till my phone rang around 9 o'clock. Tiffany's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment I considered not answering. But curiosity won out. Hi, Mom Charlotte. Her voice was bright and cheerful, just like always. I hope you don't mind, but I stopped by earlier and saw your car leaving. Did you drop something off? The ease with which she lied stunned me. She knew I'd been there. Had she seen me? Did she know I'd overheard? I kept my voice steady. Just the final head count. Everything's all set for next week. You're amazing, she gushed. I was just telling Audrey how lucky we are to have you handling everything. I don't know what we would have done without you. Every word felt like salt in an open wound. Marcus and I were talking about the reception, and we were wondering if you might be willing to help with one more tiny thing. Here it comes, I thought. Of course, dear. What do you need? Well, there are going to be quite a few children there. You know how Marcus's family is, and we were hoping maybe you could keep an eye on them during the dinner and dancing, just to make sure they don't get too wild or interrupt the festivities. She delivered it so sweetly, so innocently, like she was asking me to do the most natural thing in the world. 15 children, she explained, for a few hours, in a side room. They wanted to stick me in a corner with 15 kids so I wouldn't embarrass them in front of their friends. The woman who was paying for their entire reception thought it was being relegated to unpaid babysitting duty. Let me think about it, I said. And after we hung up, I sat in my quiet house and made a decision. I'd spent 2 years bending over backward to make Tiffany feel loved and welcomed, and in return, I'd been classified as useful help to be managed and deployed where convenient. Well, if I was just hired help, maybe it was time I gave my notice. I picked up my phone and started making calls. First, the caterer. Hello, this is Charlotte Fitzgerald. I need to cancel the buffet order for the Marcus Fitzgerald wedding on June 15th. Next, the florist. Then the linen rental company. One by one, I systematically undid 3 months of careful planning. With each call, I felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in 2 years, I was making decisions based on what I wanted, not what would make everyone else happy. My final call was to my dear friend, Loretta. What are you doing next Saturday? I asked. How would you feel about a spa weekend in the mountains? My treat. Friday night, the evening before the wedding, I sat down at my computer and wrote them a letter. I told them exactly what I'd overheard and how it made me feel. I explained that I'd canceled all my contributions to their wedding because I decided to quit my job as their unpaid help. I told Marcus that I'd raised him to treat people with respect and kindness, and that I was disappointed in how he'd allowed his fiancée to treat his mother. I printed the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and drove to their apartment one last time. Using my key, I slipped the letter under their bedroom door, where they'd be sure to find it in the morning. Saturday morning, Loretta picked me up at 7 sharp. She took one look at my face and wrapped me in a hug that smelled like her signature lavender perfume. You sure about this, honey? She asked. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I replied. We drove to Mountain View Spa, checked into our adjoining rooms around 10, just about the time the wedding ceremony would have been starting. Instead of watching my son make vows, I was slipping into a plush white robe and heading for my first appointment, a hot stone massage that promised to melt away tension. As skilled hands worked knots out of muscles I didn't even know were tight. I let myself imagine what was happening back home. They would have found my letter by now. They'd probably tried calling me, but my phone was turned off and locked in my room safe. They were likely scrambling, trying to figure out what to do about food for 60 guests. Part of me felt guilty, a very small part, but mostly I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of standing up for myself. After the massage, Loretta and I met at the mineral pools. You know, she said, settling into the warm water beside me. I've been waiting for you to do something like this for years. What do you mean? Charlotte, honey, I've watched you bend over backward for everyone in that family since Harold died. Your kids call when they need money, babysitting, or someone to fix their problems. When's the last time one of them called just to see how you were doing? I started to protest, but the words died in my throat. She was right. We spent the afternoon moving from treatment to treatment, facials, manicures, aromatherapy sessions. With each passing hour, I felt more like myself again. Not Marcus's mother, not the family problem solver, not the convenient helper. Just Charlotte Dot by the time I returned to my room after a seaweed wrap. My phone showed 17 missed calls and 12 voicemails. I listened to them in chronological order, and the progression was almost comical if it weren't so tragic. The first message at 10:47 a.m. was Marcus, sounding confused and angry. Mom, we got your letter. This is insane. Call me back immediately. By 11:45 a.m., he was panicked. Mom, there are 60 people here and no food. Whatever you think you heard, we can work it out. But you can't do this to us on our wedding day. By message 8, I could hear Tiffany crying in the background. By message 12, Marcus was offering to pay me back for everything, plus extra, if I would just fix this. The final voicemail was from both of them together. Mom, Marcus's voice was strained. Look, I don't know what we did, but I'm sorry, okay? We're both sorry. Everything is falling apart. We need you. We need you. Not we love you or we're sorry we hurt you. We need you. I picked up the phone and dialed Marcus's number. He answered on the first ring. Mom, thank God. Where are you? Can you ... I'm at a spa, I interrupted calmly. Having a lovely weekend with Loretta. Mom, you have to come back. Everything is a disaster. There's no food, no music. The kids are destroying the decorations, ... That sounds very stressful for you. Mom, please. I know you're upset, but we can talk about this later. Right now, I need you to ... No. The word hung in the air between us. What? I said no, Marcus. I'm not coming back. I'm not fixing your problems. I'm not providing last-minute solutions to the mess you created by treating me like disposable help. I could hear Tiffany's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. Tiffany wants to talk to you, Marcus said. I'm sure she does. But talking isn't going to fix this. You want to know what will fix this? Time. Genuine change in how you treat people. And the understanding that respect isn't something you get because you're family. It's something you earn through your actions. Mom, people are leaving ... Then maybe you should have thought about that before planning to stick. Your mother in a corner with 15 kids so she wouldn't embarrass you at your party. The silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. How did you ... double quotes he started. I heard everything, Marcus. Every word about the old lady who needed to be kept busy and out of everyone's hair. Every laugh about relegating me to diaper duty at my son's wedding. More silence. Then quietly, Mom, I love you, Marcus. I love both of you. but I won't be taken for granted anymore. When you're ready to treat me like family instead of like staff, call me. Until then, enjoy your pizza reception. I hung up and turned off my phone. For the first time in 8 years, I was putting myself first. The first few days after the wedding were blissfully silent. No phone calls, no unexpected visits, no requests for help or advice. I used the time to rediscover what I enjoyed doing for myself. I read 3 novels I've been meaning to get to for months. I reorganized my craft room and started working on a quilt I'd abandoned years ago when family obligations took priority. On Wednesday, exactly 5 days after the wedding, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Marcus standing on my porch, alone. He looked tired and disheveled, like he hadn't been sleeping well. Good. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. Hello, Marcus. Mom. He looked down at his feet, then back up at me. Can we talk? That depends. Are you here to apologize, or are you here to tell me how I ruined your wedding? I'm here to apologize. I stepped back and let him in. We sat in my living room, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. This was my house, my space, my rules. If he wanted to talk, he could start. I don't know where to begin, he finally said. The truth is usually a good place. He nodded, rubbing his hands together nervously. You were right about everything. We did treat you like hired help, and it was wrong. And Tiffany did plan to stick you with babysitting duty so you wouldn't be in the way during the reception. And I let it happen. I stood by and let my fiancé treat my mother like she was some burden to be managed, instead of the woman who raised me and was paying for our reception. I waited. He continued. The wedding was a disaster, Mom. Complete chaos. The pizza was cold. The kids destroyed half the decorations, and most of the guests left before the dancing even started. Tiffany cried for hours, and honestly, I felt like crying too. I'm sorry you had a disappointing wedding day, I said, and I meant it. But I'm not sorry I wasn't there to fix it. I know. And you shouldn't be sorry. We created that mess ourselves. He looked around my living room, taking in the family photos and the comfortable space I built for myself. Mom, I've been thinking a lot the past few days about how I've treated you since Dad died. And you're right, I have been treating you like an employee. Someone who exists to solve my problems and make my life easier. This was more self-awareness than I'd expected from him. When did I become someone you managed instead of someone you loved? I asked. He was quiet for a long time. I think it started after Dad died. You were so strong, so capable of handling everything. It became easy to just expect that you take care of things. And over the years, expecting became assuming, and assuming became taking for granted, and I let it happen, I admitted. I was so afraid of being alone, so desperate to feel needed, that I said yes to everything. But being needed and being valued are two different things. I do value you. Mom, I just forgot how to show it. Actions, Marcus. Value is shown through actions, not words. We talked for another hour about what needed to change. I explained that my help was a gift, not a given. That I had a life and interest that didn't revolve around being his mother. That if he wanted me involved in something, I needed to be consulted as family, not deployed as staff. and that both he and Tiffany owed me genuine apologies. Asterisk Marcus gave me his apology right then, sincere and complete. He acknowledged how he'd failed me and promised to do better. When I asked about Tiffany, he said she wanted to apologize too, if I'd give her the chance. 2 days later, Tiffany knocked on my door alone. She looked even worse than Marcus had, pale and thin with dark circles under her red-rimmed eyes. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. Hello, Tiffany. Mrs. Fitzgerald, Mom Charlotte. If you'll still let me call you that, that depends on what you have to say. Asterisk Marcus gave me his apology right then, sincere and complete. He acknowledged how he'd failed me and promised to do better. When I asked about Tiffany, he said she wanted to apologize too, if I'd give her the chance. 2 days later, Tiffany knocked on my door alone. She looked even worse than Marcus had, pale and thin with dark circles under her red-rimmed eyes. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. Hello, Tiffany. Mrs. Fitzgerald, Mom Charlotte. If you'll still let me call you that, that depends on what you have to say. Asterisk. We sat in the same chairs where Marcus and I had talked, but the atmosphere was much more tense. Tiffany kept fidgeting with her wedding ring, twisting it around her finger. I don't know how to do this, she said finally. Do what? Apologize to someone I hurt this badly. I've never had to before. The honesty in that statement was staggering. I suggested she start with acknowledging what she'd done wrong. Asterisk, she took a shaky breath and began listing her offenses. Using me for 2 years while pretending to care. Letting me pay for everything while never considering my feelings. Planning to stick me with babysitting duty. Calling me an old lady and laughing about it. Treating me like a pathetic burden instead of the woman who'd opened her heart to her. She was crying now, ugly tears that made her mascara run. When I asked her why, she whispered, because I'm a coward. Because I was terrified of getting too close to another mother figure and losing her like I lost my real mom. So I kept you at arm's length by treating you like a service provider instead of family. If you were just helping me instead of loving me, then it wouldn't hurt as much if something happened to you. This was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. But it backfired, she continued. Because now I have lost you, and it hurts worse than anything I was trying to protect myself from. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or performance. But all I saw was a young woman who had finally been forced to confront the walls she'd built around her heart. Tiffany, I understand that losing your mother was devastating, but fear doesn't excuse cruelty. And treating someone badly to protect yourself from loss is just another form of selfishness. She nodded miserably and told me she'd started therapy since the wedding, trying to figure out why she sabotaged every good relationship in her life. She wanted to earn my forgiveness through actions, not words. She wanted to show me that she could learn to love without walls. I agreed to give her one more chance, but it came with conditions. She had to continue therapy, stop asking me for help until she'd proven she could value me for who I was, and understand that if she ever treated me that way again, there wouldn't be another chance. I told her that at 72 years old. I didn't have time to waste on people who didn't genuinely love and respect me. The next few months were a revelation. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly fielding calls for help or being expected to fix everyone's problems. Marcus and Tiffany kept their word. When they wanted to include me in something, they asked genuinely instead of assuming. When they needed help, they presented it as a request I could decline without guilt. The first test came in August when Marcus called on a Sunday evening, just to check on me, not because he needed something. They invited me to dinner, asking what worked for my schedule instead of assuming I was available. When Marcus's car broke down in September, he called a mechanic instead of calling me for money. The most telling moment came in October when they planned a Halloween party. "We'd love to have you there," Marcus said, "but we know you might have other plans. And if you come, you're coming as a guest. No setup, no cleanup, no managing anything. Just come and have fun with us." I almost cried right there at their kitchen table. The party was everything a family gathering should be. I felt like family instead of staff for the first time in years. Just over a year after the wedding disaster, they told me they were pregnant. But instead of assuming what my role would be, they asked me to define it myself. They wanted to know what being a grandmother meant to me, what I'd enjoy doing, and what my boundaries were. They promised to communicate instead of assuming, and I promised to speak up if I felt taken for granted. That winter, as Tiffany's pregnancy progressed, I found myself with something I hadn't had in years. Time to pursue my own interests without guilt. I'd been keeping a journal since the spa weekend, and Loretta suggested I write a book. Do you know how many women our age are being taken for granted by their families? She asked out I spent 6 months writing, setting the table, a guide to family boundaries and self-respect. The title came from thinking about all those meals I prepared over the years, how setting the table was an act of love and service, but how the people at that table needed to appreciate both the meal and the person who made it possible, my granddaughter. Lily was born on a beautiful spring morning in April, exactly 2 years after the wedding that changed everything. When I walked into that hospital room, Tiffany genuinely offered to let me hold her, not out of obligation, but because she wanted to share that moment with me. Over the next months, the boundaries and respect we built proved invaluable. When they needed help with Lily, they asked specifically and accepted gracefully when I said no. When I offered help, it was received as a gift. I babysat when I wanted to spend time with her, not because it was expected. Most importantly, they made sure I felt like Lily's grandmother, not just her babysitter. My book found its audience among women who recognized their own stories and mine. The most meaningful letter came from a grandmother in Oregon who'd been asked to plan and pay for her daughter-in-law's baby shower, then told she wasn't invited because it was just for real friends. She found the courage to say no for the first time in 10 years. Today is June 15th, exactly 3 years since the wedding that never happened the way it was planned. Marcus and Tiffany are celebrating their 3rd anniversary, and I'm helping in the kitchen because I want to be here, not because I have to be. Little Lily, now 15 months old, calls me Nana and brings me books to read. They've asked me to officiate their vow renewal next year, saying they want the person who taught them the most about marriage, about respect and boundaries and real love, to help them renew their promises to each other, As I look around this room at my family, I realize that the wedding disaster was the best thing that ever happened to us. Not because conflict is good, but because it forced us to examine what we really meant to each other. I learned that being needed and being valued are different things, that love requires respect to survive, and that setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sustainable. Sometimes the best thing you can do for the people you love is teach them how to love you properly. It might be painful in the moment, but the reward, genuine, respectful, sustainable love is worth every difficult conversation and every boundary set. The wedding that never was became the foundation for the family we became. And that, I think, is the most beautiful ending of all.